The following podcast is an Embassy Row production.
There is no holding me back. This is a new episode of the Shaken and Stirred Show. I'm Nigel Barker in New York, and I'm with my co-host Tom Astor in Oxford, who is relentless today. He's clearly on fire. He's been messing with his filters. So if you're watching this on YouTube, and we do have a YouTube channel, people, you can actually watch this. You don't have to just listen to us. Shaken and Stirred, every episode, you can actually view Tom Astor, the snapper, in all his beauty, in all his sepia beauty, that he's now used this weird filter that makes him look like he's from a vintage film from the 1950s when they first introduced Technicolor. Tom, how are you, mate?
Very Technicolor, feeling very 50s and a bit vintage.
You are looking a little vintage, a little crackly around the edges, but hey, you know, what are you drinking, old boy?
What am I drinking, you ask?
I ask.
This evening.
Looks fabulous.
Look, it's got flowers and everything in it. I think you can eat them. Maybe not the orange peel. I am drinking an Elderflower Sour. Somewhere rolls off the tongue.
Very nice.
Made by my what are they called? It's not barista. What's the opposite? What's the other? What are they called? Mixologist. I think it's
mixologist, who's in the room by all accounts too. Tom has someone to help prompt him along these days. You know,
No, I don't have the word, but all she's doing is doing a pose, so it's fine. Anyway, an Elderflower Sour. So, homemade elderflower cordial with a large splash of vodka, some lemon juice, and an egg white. Shaken, not stirred.
And this is a dry shake?
It's like, I literally just suddenly look dry shake. It's like, what is it? What the fuck? What's
dry shake is when you put it with no ice and you just use and you shake up the egg white in advance and then you add the ice.
It's definitely got ice in it, yeah. Absolutely. Ice, a wet shake.
Good old wet shake, people. That's how he likes to do his Elderflower Sour. You've been enjoying the odd sour recently. I've noticed this is not your first. You've been on a sour tip.
I leave it.
I'm not talking about your personality either.
Yeah, no, I'm not sour. I'm a sweet thing, really. Feeling. Anyway, what did you manage to conjure up? No doubt.
I decided to conjure up something incredibly boring for once. Unlike you, who decided to go for something rather extraordinary, I am simply doing a tequila reposado on the rock with a slice of lime. And we will get to why when we meet our guest today, because there's a lot of why in what I'm drinking. But in the meantime, cheers, Tom.
Chin chin, man.
Chin chin.
Happy days.
Happy days. Quite delicious. On to...
No, yours is not as good as mine. That's delicious. Sorry.
Mine is not as good as yours. Well, hey, you know, mine is simple. Mine gets to the point. Sometimes you just want not a cocktail, but just straight liquor. And it's one of my go-tos, tequila reposado on the rocks. I haven't mentioned which tequila, but that's coming, folks. Before we get to our guest today, we do have booze news, people. Booze news. Now, in the world of booze, there's not always something going on. But this is a little different in as much as Guinness, one of my favorite drinks, by the way, and at my local pub in New York City, they happen to have a drink named after me called the Barker Bomb, which is, in fact, a pint of Guinness, which goes alongside a shot of tequila. And you buy the two together. Now, in a traditional bomb, you drop it into the actual Guinness. But at the bar, we actually simply just serve them side by side. And really the beer is a chaser to the tequila. And I like my tequila, we've talked about that already. But Guinness, a staple of Irish culture, is moving to Chicago, people. Well, what I mean by moving is they are opening a 15,000 square foot pub in Fulton Market in Chicago. This is the very first on-the-ground Guinness pub in the United States. And they've picked Chicago to do it in. And they're going to be serving Irish pub food, and they're going to be brewing beer on site in Chicago as well, which is a first, which is pretty unusual. It's pretty cool. And they're going to be also selling, I guess they have a few other things, Indian Pale Ale, Blonde Ale, a Milk Stout. So very, very cool. And the actual, I guess, the head of Guinness in the US has said the city was a natural choice to bring our first neighborhood hub to life. We aim to celebrate Chicago and make a positive impact on the local community from the day our doors open. So there you go, people.
Not by getting them completely wasted.
Get them completely wasted. This opens March 2023 on St. Patrick's Day, and there will be celebrations and game days at Wrigley Field. So there you go, something to look forward to, you Chicagoans. I think I might come along and sort of join in the festivities.
Well, as you know, Nigel, my maternal grandmother's a Guinness, so I have it in my blood. And there's one issue with Guinness that I would like to point out, that it's all well and good brewing this stuff in America. It's all well and good them brewing it in England. It's all well and good brewing it wherever. But a pint of Guinness never ever tastes as good as it does in Ireland. And it's been said, it's not traveling so much, it's the water.
The terroir.
And I can attest to that. I love Guinness, absolutely love Guinness. And there is nowhere else in the world where it tastes as good as in Ireland itself. They say it's the water, but I've got to believe it actually. But anyway,
I agree with you. I think I've had Guinness in Ireland, and it does taste uniquely different. We've talked about this a little bit with with the terroir, which is the soil with wine. But they've talked about how people can taste the difference even with whiskies and scotches and what have you, depending on the water as well as the soil of where all of this is brought up. So it's very interesting. I would imagine the water plays a large part. And there's something very nostalgic, if nothing else, having a Guinness in Ireland. But on to our wonderful guest today. All right, everybody, our guest this week is one of the most recognizable names in fashion, responsible for creating things like the iconic Calvin Klein boxer brief to laceless sneakers for Converse. And he has his own iconic brand, which I happen to be wearing today. So if you're going to be watching us on YouTube, you can see that I have one of his jackets on and a shirt, believe it or not. Look, this guy also has a delicious tequila that he created with Nick Jonas called Villa One. That's what I'm drinking. That was the surprise, people. With us today, please welcome John Varvatos. John, how are you?
I'm great. How are you guys doing today?
Very well. Very, very good indeed. Tom is not drinking tequila. Tom is drinking some sort of sour, elderflower sour that he has sort of whipped up for himself with flowers floating around.
It sounds disgusting, Tom.
Well, it's not. It's not.
Although it's late in the UK, so you should be drinking tequila.
You know something? I think we're going to have to agree on something here, because it's got my homemade elderflower cordial in, which is obviously delicious because I made it. Vodka in it, which can't go wrong, a bit of egg white, and I absolutely loathe tequila. So we are going to just have to load each other's drinks on this one. Nigel, on the other hand, I've never heard anyone talk about tequila so much as him, and I've never heard anyone get so excited about talking to you as he is today.
Well, my thing, I'll try your elderberry, whatever your concoction is, but I think you just haven't had good tequila before. That's why you loathe it.
Hello, right? That's true. I've been talking about this with him forever. It's like it has been, John. This has been over a year in the making. We have been talking about. I drink all kinds of tequila. I make all kinds of drinks with tequila, and every time he looks at me and he says on the show, "That's filthy. That's disgusting." And I'm like, "Hey, well, you're missing out.
Let's just talk about filthy. So tequila happens to be the healthiest of all spirits. There's no sugar in it. When I talk to my doctor and when I talk to my trainer and he says, "What did you drink last night?" and I tell him tequila, he goes, "If you're going to drink anything, I guess it's okay to drink tequila."
It is indeed sort of the sort of skinny version of alcohol. It's sort of no wonder it's such a with the fashion crowd. But what are you drinking right now, John? What have you got in front of yourself?
I'm drinking a spicy mango Rita.
Oh wow!
And basically, I started, I guess, during COVID, trying to be a little bit more of a mixologist and playing around with things. And I came up with this last summer, and it became a real favorite with my wife and I and all of our friends. So I can't kind of get away from it right now. And I'm at my office still working, but it was nice to take this break because it's 5 o'clock here and mix up one of these babies.
So how did you get into the mango aspect of it? Because big this summer was the Paloma. Everywhere I went, Paloma, Paloma, Paloma. And I'm like, okay, everyone's into the grapefruit. And, every year there's some drink, that hits it big. Aperol Spritz was the sort of on everyone's, mouth for a while. But the Paloma was big this year. But you went down the spicy mango margarita, which, by the way, having mango, fresh, mango on hand in your office is pretty impressive. That's all I want to say.
Well, there's you can buy mango juice for sure to use in it. I actually have a mortar and pestle here where I kind of beat up that mango and got as much juice through a strainer as I could on it. And, that's kind of what it looks like.
So it looks basically like orange juice, people, at the moment. He doesn't have a very, the fact that he's a designer, he has not gone for the designer glass. He has a very thin looking glass that looks like it actually probably could have orange juice in it.
Well, because I'm at my office, I didn't have all the correct barware, but at least I had the correct ingredients.
You had a pestle and mortar, for God's sakes. Who has a pestle and mortar?
I brought that in with me today. I brought that in with me today, not remembering the glass. But so this has a couple of ounces of fresh squeezed mango. And I actually went for about 3 ounces of Villa One. So you can do 1 ounce of fresh squeezed mango for 1.5 ounces of Villa One Reposado. Most people, when they do the margaritas, they use silver. I love this with the Reposado. And then about 1/2 ounce of fresh squeezed lime juice and a sprinkle of habanero powder. And that's the kind of thing that you have to kind of test out to see what your liking is for habanero. I've kind of grown over time to sprinkle a little bit more and a little bit more. So today I put about 3 to 4 shakes in it. Usually when I started, it was like 1 good shake. And I put it in over ice, shake it vigorously, and it makes something very special. It's tough to tell here in this. I'm looking it up to the screen, but
absolutely delicious. Sounds fantastic. And I've done something sort of similar not with a habanero, but actually getting the sort of chilies, and actually making my own simple syrup and infusing them with the chili, and then therefore it goes into the drink that way. But this is, I guess, a more deliberate. You don't have to make the fuss with the simple syrup and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we also take jalapenos and put them in like a Mason's jar with the tequila. Let them stay for the better part of a week. Cut those up, and that's all you really need too. So that's another way you could be with a jalapeno as well.
So look, John, everyone knows your name, John Varvatos. You're synonymous with dressing stars, celebrities. I'm wearing your clothes right now. You actually, you probably don't even know this, but your team and your label dressed me on my show The Face with Naomi Campbell for 2 years. So for 2 years, all I wore on television was John Varvatos. So I happen to have quite a lot of your clothes in my wardrobe. So that's another reason why I was quite excited, because you made me look good for many years next to a supermodel like Naomi Campbell, for goodness sakes.
I love that. And I appreciate the support there too.
Yeah, well, likewise, I think you were supporting me rather than me supporting you. But anyway, you dress celebrities. You're in that world of fashion and the celebrity world. You decide to do a tequila. Now it's sort of, although a lot of people are sort of getting into the tequila and the sort of celebrity alcohol world, fashion designers getting into it is a little bit different. You have a different sensibility. You're not necessarily the face, the name everyone knows, but the face people sort of know, but perhaps not as well as your partner, Nick Jonas, in this particular venture. But what was your decision to say, okay, my next thing is going to be tequila, not a fashion house, not some other thing you're going to do, but tequila?
Well, I've been drinking tequila for 25, 27 years, something like that. And so it's been my go-to drink. And I met Nick Jonas now about 8 years ago at a dinner party. And we got to know each other over quite a few glasses of tequila that night. And a couple things I found out about him is that he's
A lightweight. I know, Nick. He's a bloody lightweight. Can't have drunk that much tequila. I'm going to have him on here. His brother's been on the show, by the way. So
Joe, yeah.
well, and his
Kevin,
Kevin as well. Oh, back in the day. So anyway, yeah.
Actually, he can hold his own, but he's a type 1 diabetic. And when I asked him why, he told me that night that he loves tequila and he thought it was interesting that we both were so passionate about it. And he told me that, listen, because I'm a diabetic, I have to be really careful with sugar. And tequila doesn't, it's agave. It is the healthiest of the spirits out there. And that's also why a lot of young people drink it that take care of their bodies as well. And it also is the only upper out there, so they can stay out late as a spirit. But we had this conversation over a lot of things, over creativity, music, fashion, family. The next day he called me or sent me a text and said, I'm in the studio working on some music. I'd love for you to come by and listen to it. I went by there and there was a bottle of tequila in the recording studio. And we continued that conversation that we started the night before for another 4 hours, let's say. And over time, over the next few months, we saw quite a bit of each other, either in New York and LA. And, he started coming by my design studio. He lived quite near there in the city. His apartment was there. And we started talking about potentially doing a fashion collaboration.
That I can see.
Just a capsule of some sort. And we started working on that. And while we were working on that, we were, of course, enjoying tequila, talking about the Tequila Market, why you have to spend $160 to really get what we thought was a great tequila. Why can't you do an ultra premium tequila for less than half that price or a quarter of that price?
And your tequila, Villa One, so this literally retails at like around $50 a bottle, does it not?
Yeah, we start at under $50 for the silver and go up to about $60 for the añejo, the reposado in the low 50s. And we really, for us, we wanted to, when we got into thinking about tequila, the main reason was, could we create something that was best in class? Everything we looked at, what we've done in our other careers, was about trying to raise the bar and create things that were best in class. And so that's kind of how we got to the tequila conversation was, could we create something that was best in class? And why couldn't we? Why couldn't we do something and also have it accessible? We ended up hooking up with the people from Stoli that Nick had a previous relationship with. And they had just bought a distillery in Jalisco, Mexico. And so they loved our concept when we presented. What they loved was that we weren't presenting it as a celebrity spirit. We were presenting it as best in class with all the great creative details in terms of the design of the packaging, the storytelling, the branding, and the marketing. And so we ended up going down to Jalisco with them and visiting the distillery and spending a couple days down there with an amazing guy by the name of Arturo Fuentes, who's the master distiller. And people in the tequila world really know Arturo. And I had no idea.
I know who he is.
Yeah, I had no idea how much until we had dinner the first night. And we were in Jalisco having dinner in a small restaurant. And all these people were coming by and calling him Godfather. And I was like, what is the Godfather thing about? And it's because he has created so many amazing tequilas over time, some of the top tequilas in the world.
And by the way, you have to say you like his tequila, otherwise, the Godfather thing comes in even harder, and you never
actually he has the personality that he wants to also raise the bar and do something special and please you. He really wants to do both at the same time. So that's kind of how we got into it. And we began that journey down there with Arturo.
Amazing. And what a great story. But so, I mean, again, I've got 3 bottles in front of me. I've got your añejo, I've got your reposado, I've got your silver or blanco, as I like to call it. You've called it Villa One. Where did the name come from? Why Villa One? Villa sounds Italian. I mean, I don't understand.
Well, it's also a Spanish word too, or and we hear a lot of it in Mexico when they talk about their homes. But and their villas aren't always what we would consider a villa. But when we went down to Jalisco, on our way down, we stopped at a beautiful resort for one night. We got there at 9 o'clock at night, and it was going to be a brainstorming session before we went to the distillery the next day. And we happened to be with our partners, our future partners with Stoli. And so we were drinking tequila. We were talking about names. We were talking about branding and a lot of the things that were on our mind. And we threw out a lot of names. And one of the names that we kind of threw out in passing was the place that the villa that we were staying in, which was called Villa One. And the next morning we got up to leave very early, sunrise type of thing. And we closed the little wooden gate outside our villa, and there was a little plaque on it and it said Villa One. And Nick and I looked at each other and said, this could be it. And two things happened that over that 12-hour period. One, the name Villa One, because we thought it was about celebrating moments in time, special moments with families and friends. And a lot of times you do that at your home. And at maybe 2:30 in the morning, right before we were going to go to bed, Nick raised his glass to do a toast. And he said, "To life as it should be." And that was the other thing that hit me over the head that night. I thought, wow, we need to trademark that. That's such a poignant statement. Little did I know we'd be living through the world that we just lived through for the last year and a half or more now, where people just want to get back to life as it should be. So it's really even more so, all of these things have kind of fallen into kind of a special place in our hearts. The name Villa One, the hallmark kind of to life as it should be, because they have special meanings about when we think about celebrating those special moments with your family and friends, which are the most important thing, which is we also learned a lot during COVID about kind of really getting your arms around those special moments as well.
So you mentioned the price point, which is an interesting thing, because there's obviously the 1942s of this world and Casa Azul and Casamigos and various big brands out there that are competing in the space, but they are, for 1942, you're talking about $165 a bottle. Casa Azul, you're talking probably about $135 a bottle. Casamigos, the liter bottle, which is, it's more closer to about what you're sort of charging, the sort of $65 a bottle kind of range. And you talked about, making it accessible. How do you make it accessible? What was the trick? Is it about buying enough of the quantity so that you can, or having access to a larger distillery, or what is how do you do that? I mean, obviously Stoli is a very big backer, and I've spoken to a lot of different people about tequila over the years, and oftentimes the issue is how much they can make. You're with a supplier who can only really supply you with X amount of it, and so therefore your cost is going to be what it is. So to get it to this price, it's not easy necessarily to do if it's going to be really premium. So I'm curious as to what was
the first thing we have is we have Arturo. So he really understands making tequila. He's a master. And he had a lot of thoughts on that. One of them was that he wanted to propose that we use agaves from both the highlands and the lowlands. Because the highlands are quite sweet and the lowlands are a little earthier. And as far as we know, there's only one other tequila brand that does that. So starting with that premise to understand how you get to a taste profile that puts you in the ultra premium category at a reasonable price. The other thing is that we also own the distillery. Stoli owns the distillery. So you're not like a lot of those names that you mentioned, they use outside facilities to make tequila. And they definitely buy their agaves from other people, from plantations. Stoli was smart enough to also buy thousands of acres of agave plantations around the distillery. So you control the process from quality through the distilling process and all of the ingredients all the way through. There's an artesian well that flows underneath the distillery. So the water is fantastic, and it's filtered 7 or 8 times, maybe even 9. I can't remember. It was quite a few. It's at least 7 or 8 times it's filtered. So a lot of, like, it's kind of like what makes a white t-shirt X price and what makes a white t-shirt another price when they're quite similar.
It's a bloody good question, John. I think a lot of people in the world would like to know that. I mean,
Yeah,
I would love to know.
And sometimes it's really about attention to detail and sometimes it is quantities, as you said.
But sometimes it's just having the name John Varvatos in the back of the shirt, which then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm going to pay extra for that.
You're wearing a white dress shirt, and there are white dress shirts that are quite expensive, that are beautiful. There's white dress shirts that are kind of medium price points that are beautiful. A lot of it depends on all the development, the sourcing, what you make, and the control of it, and only making one product for yourself is really the thing that Villa One is. We only make tequila. We only make it in one facility. We have one master distiller in there. So, I think it was building towards that. And, when we created the product, we didn't think about, okay, what do we have to do to get to this price point? It was, Arturo, let's make the best product we can make, and then let's figure it out. It just happened to all fall into place, including all the packaging, the bottles, all of that, because the bottle also looks, quite expensive. It has a lot of great details on it. So we had to manage all of that through the process. And part of that's proper sourcing and development of that as well.
I mean, I think you sort of nailed it with the fact that you said this Stoli owns the actual distillery. So what a lot of people don't realize, and as John pointed out, that a lot of these big brands, and a lot of brands in general, in fact, most of the brands, get their tequila from the same place, actually. And it's that certain sort of distilleries, if you like, will produce multiple tequilas for different people out of the same agave, at the same place, out of the same stills, and it's at different price points. They go in, they taste it, they create their flavor profile, and then that's made for them. And this is obviously, I think people often think of, when they think of an alcohol, they assume it's Scotland, a whiskey is being made in this castle, in this region, in this loch, in this area, on this highland, as you would with a wine in any one chateau, in any one region. But with tequila, it's a little different. So the fact that you've got control of that is an interesting reason for why you were able to keep the price point down. Now, as far as tasting it and coming up with the flavor, how involved were you and Nick in the actual sampling of and sort of, other than Arturo, who's obviously a genius, what was your input?
Well, we were quite involved. It started on our first trip down there. In advance, we kind of sent him some notes of some of the notes on the type of notes that we like in our tequila, and also to allow him the room to be able to spread his wings to create around that. And it was interesting. Somewhere I have a picture of us. We went into his amazing tasting room in the distillery with the big windows opened up and overlooking the agave plantations. And the table was filled with flutes of tequila in silver, reposado, and añejo, and variations that he had prepared in advance. I'm going to say there was probably 15 of each.
Wow.
Of each type. And so we started with that and kind of went towards our direction. It got a little hazy as we got towards number 13 to 15 after sipping all of those.
At which point you're like, this is it. This was fantastic. I love this. Is my favorite. And you're like, no, actually, that's the worst one. But
Is it like wine tasting? I mean, you tasting it and spitting it out, or are you actually drinking?
No, we weren't spitting anything out. No, we weren't spitting
anything. That really is okay. So really, but yeah, I can see that could get quite dangerous. You could do that over
15 tequila shots later, and you're like, yes, I'll take it all.
We maybe didn't go for a full shot each time, but we definitely had multiple sips, so we really understood it. And
in between shots, John, what do you do to clear the mouth and clear the palate? Are you coffee sniffing, or what's happening here?
We just drank water we just drank water. We didn't really clear the palate any other way.
This is what happens when you get a musician and a fashion designer, tequila folks. They're bloody well, they're getting pissed and drinking it and loving it. This is what I love it. It's a great story behind tequila. Sorry, carry on.
No, so we left a day and a half, 2 days later, we left Jalisco and headed back to LA and New York. And Arturo said, I'll have some variations to send you next week. And the one thing we have to understand, though, is that those variations aren't 100% pure, because the añejo's in American oak barrels for 12 to 18 months, the reposado for 6 to 8 months, and the silver, which isn't aged. So you also have to take that into account, that they're not fully aged. They're not aged maybe the way you wanted them to. So we went on for almost 14 months of tasting every week, till we got to a point where we started doing tastings with our friends and blind tastings. It started off just tasting the 3 variations that he would send. And then it went to the blind tastings, where we would take some of those brands that you mentioned, and we would put them all in a plain bottle. And we didn't know there was a dot on the bottom that the friend was kind of taking care of. And we would all go through that. And when all of a sudden the Villa One versions were always rising to the top of the voting, we knew that we could say, Arturo, we're pretty much there. We think we've got something here. Nick and I even did one of those together with a bunch of people. And it was pretty exciting, actually, to start to see that happen. So then Arturo went through full, the silver was finalized, and then he went through the whole full aging process on the Repo and the Añejo.
Amazing, interesting. And this is your lineup currently? Are you looking at an extra añejo, an older version? What other versions are you looking at?
Well, right now we're still in our, we launched just prior to COVID. When I say just prior, in the month or so prior to COVID. So we did a very nice business in the spirit stores, the liquor stores, but all of the on-premise, the restaurants and bars, were shut down for 6-8 months or whatever. So we still are kind of, rebuilding that part of it. It hasn't been that long. We're in development on some things, like a Cristalino. We're looking at a Cristalino. We're also looking at an extra añejo that takes a bit longer.
Everyone, let's explain that to everybody, because an extra añejo, for those of you who don't know, is aged añejo. So it's aged in the barrel, and it's normally around 30 to 40 months old, right? That's correct.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
correct.
The Cristalino is an aged Blanco, essentially, but it's aged in. Can you describe how it's aged?
Well, yeah, it really isn't a blind. It's the process that it's distilled that really it doesn't. You're not aging it in oak barrels, so you're not getting the color, because when you age in oak, part of the beautiful amber color, and the longer they sit in there, the darker the color is. So you're aging in non-oak, and it's definitely fully aged, like the length of a reposado, but it's clear. So it's crystal clear, which is really kind of unusual. And it was something that I tried when I was in Mexico prior to launching Villa One. Somebody at a hotel I was staying at, when I asked him what his favorite tequila was, the bartender, he said, you should try this one here. He goes, there's a lot of great tequilas up here, but my favorite right now is this one. And it was a Cristalino, and I really loved the crispness of it. It didn't, I love the oakiness of the Repo and the Añejo, but it had a different sense than anything else I had ever tasted. So it's something that we're playing around with right now. So yes, we're staying in tequila though at the moment. We're not really branching out from that.
And folks, with the Cristalino, if you like the taste, the sort of the smokier kind of taste of an añejo or a reposado, and you want to make a cocktail but not change the color of a cocktail, it's a great opportunity because it's clear. You still keep the consistency of the color of your drink, which by the way is quite important. I know sometimes people poo-poo it, but it does make a difference, the look and feel of a cocktail. But you still get the flavor. So you do. It is a really nice option. So that's exciting to hear that from you. Now, I've got a couple of these in front of me. I'm going to pour myself your should we start with, I'm going to do a little reposado. I want you to talk to me a little bit about the color, the sort of the flavor profile and what I should be experiencing here. So people, I'm opening a bottle. And by the way, it's a beautiful bottle. It's very heavy. It's a very heavy bottle. It's much heavier than a lot of the bottles that are out there. Is this I guess you custom made it. It has a big glass base to it. It has a very thick glass base. Tell us about the design of the bottle as I pour a glass.
Yeah, so it's something that early on I started talking to Nick about bottle shape, kind of authenticity, and attention to detail. So the thing about this bottle is that it has this beautiful metal band, which I'm not wearing the ring today, but it came from, I actually have the bracelet on. It came from a bracelet and jewelry that I was working on. And I thought nobody does anything but a cheap ribbon up top. It'd be really beautiful to leave something. So when you do take the top off, or if you have a pour spout in it, you still have something important. The cap is very heavy as well. The glass is dyed through amber, so it's like an amber color. And then this hallmark here is something that I found in doing some research in Mexico of a old family crest, which was a combination of an agave plant and a fleur-de-lis.
I was going to say, it is a fleur-de-lis, right? That's how when I looked at it, I thought it's a fleur-de-lis, and I thought to myself, but it's not a fleur-de-lis.
Yeah, you can see the leaves and base, and we sandblast that into the glass, so you have this etched glass kind of feeling. So when you taste that, first of all, when you put that to your nose, you can kind of get the aromas of caramel, a little candy-ish, and it has when you taste it, you get a little butterscotch in it as well.
That's right, you do. It's actually delicious, by the way. And congratulations.
And it finishes with a little bit of chocolate and coffee. And it's of the three, it's Nick and my favorite. It's my go-to. I don't know how you've got it there. I see a lime, but I drink it on the rocks with a slice of orange, and that's all I need. And every time I drink it, I say to myself, this is really great. And
so tell me about the slice of orange, because I was actually the other day at an event, and it was being hosted by Cincoro, which is another tequila. And they were doing the same thing. They were slice of orange, and I understand that the orange it sort of speaks to the margarita world, doesn't it? It speaks to the the triple sec that you might put in a margarita, which is the orange liqueur, folks, that helps really identify a margarita. But I guess not lime, orange. And is that for the same reasons?
Well, you know what it was? It kind of came from, I have a little lake house upstate New York, a couple hours from the city here. And I was at a friend's who was making we were drinking margaritas one summer, one winter. I can't remember what time of year it was because we drink them all year round. But we started talking about we need to do them skinnier. So he would do it with just a splash of orange juice. Shake it vigorously, maybe a little squeeze of lime in there as well. And we were loving the way it tasted. It didn't have a lot of color. You saw a little bit of the orange in it, not near of what this looks like right now because the mango's thick. And then it went to when we developed Villa One, I really wanted to taste the tequila. I really wanted to not cover it with anything. So could it be a twist of lime to finish it sometime, which I like, but I did the sliced orange in it. And I felt like it was just enough of that little finish to me that I felt I didn't need all the sugar of a margarita, all the other accoutrements with it. I began, as we developed the tequila, I was really zeroed in on more the purity because I knew that I didn't want anybody to feel they had to cover it. It's kind of like the story that I don't like tequila that we just heard. Tom. And it's really because people sometimes had a bad experience with tequila many years ago.
Sure.
That's before there were at least people were aware there were ultra premium or premium and ultra and extra ultra premium tequilas out there. But also because sometimes the sugar, so much sugar, is not good for you either. It gives you headaches and that type of thing as well. So, it just became really about understanding the base of the tequila and can we sip the silver ourselves and feel like as a shot or just a sip that it doesn't burn, because one of the things everybody used to say to me about tequilas is that they burn. And so we talked to Arturo about that, and the silver took a long time because of that, and that's partially because of the highlands and the lowlands. It really gives it another effect. And I would say take a drink.
I've got your silver here in my hand, and again the bottle beautiful. And I you know what? It's funny, when I first looked at them, the first thing I noted, by the way, was the band around the top, as you just mentioned, the ring. That is reminiscent of your bracelet you just showed me. It's beautiful, and I absolutely, it's stunning, and it's very raw, it's very organic looking, and it looks almost like a reed has been wrapped around the top, but it's in metal. It's sort of somewhat reminiscent of those hair bracelets that you may have seen people out there, but it's wrapped across the top, and the top is heavy, feels like it's weighted. Smells very clean. I bought myself a little shot glass of this so I can just have a taste. So this is the silver. So tell me about this then. This is.
So when you get the nose on that, you get, like cooked, you can smell the agave, like cooked agave, and you also get a bit of fruit with the nose on it. And then as the liquid kind of touches your lips there, you get dried fruit and a little bit of nut. And the nut is from the lowlands agave. You really kind of get that sense there. And when it kind of finishes off with this caramelized agave sense, but I think you'll see it's quite smooth. When you think about silvers at any price, to have something that you actually don't feel the burn, pretty special. We don't mask it with any, that's the one thing that why also because of Nick, we don't mask it with any sugars or any sweeteners. It's just pure from that agave.
So I don't have any burn at all. In fact, funnily enough, and this is a compliment actually, but one of the things that it reminds me of when I taste like this is really good sake. And what I mean by that is that sake too can have a burn if it's done wrong, and you have to heat it up, do this, do that. Folks, I'm drinking this without ice. It's room temperature, and it's absolutely drinkable. This is a Villa One tequila, the silver, warm, and it's drinkable, and not more than drinkable. It's actually delicious, that's unique. That doesn't happen very often. Half the time you're like, oh no, I'm only going to mix my Blanco or my silver, or I'm only going to, put it in a margarita. But this is absolutely fantastic, and a lot of people are. This summer, I noticed too, are mixing their tequilas with things like a Spindrift or some sort of sparkling seltzer water that, in order to create a healthy, longer drink. And a silver is what would work well with it, and something like this would be perfect, no?
And it kind of harkens back to what I was saying about when we developed this. I felt like, wow, I don't want to mask it. I don't want to chill it initially. I want to taste it so that at its rawest form, what is it? How does it feel how does it feel? What does it do with your palate and the lack of burn too? Which when we were talking to Arturo about it, we said, okay, when we were doing the blind taste testing, we said, so all of these tequilas have somewhat of a burn. How are we getting this? And he said, it's the magic of his distilling, but it's also the highland, lowland agave, and that's where you get that very clean taste with it as well.
Curious, very curious. So finally, añejo. What are we doing here? I'm opening a bottle of the añejo. It looks slightly ominous. The actual glass is darker.
Yeah, that's like a smoked charcoal kind of glass. And this is aged in American oak barrels, minimum of 12 months, generally longer, depending on the plants that we used. And you get this dark, because it's in the, you can hold that up, you can see the dark amber color of that. That comes from sitting in the American oak barrels for over 12 months. And then you immediately get the notes of caramel, a little bit of wood, and a little bit of vanilla. And the thing about the vanilla, the next thing that happens that Arturo did, which we've never heard in tequila as well, is that, I don't know if you know the cookie from a kid or it's still around, but a vanilla wafer.
Of course.
And vanilla wafer, there was also these candies that were called circus candies that were soft and they tasted like banana. He put a little bit of banana in there, banana essence in there, and you get that in your nose. You can smell the banana to the nose, and it gives a long kind of lasting, fresh notes around it that finishes with like dark chocolate and honey. And it's funny because I say all these things because I've had to sit there and think about it as we were going through the process to really understand it deeply, because he wasn't just telling us what it was. He was asking us, no use for me to tell you what's in it if you don't really taste it, if you don't really smell, if that's not on your palate or if it's not in the aroma, then I'm not doing my job to really. So it's great to be able to tell the story about it and everybody kind of experience. It's like for me in the fragrance world that I spent, I have a big fragrance business. It's a similar process in that when it hits the air, it's one thing. When it's on the skin with your chemistry of your body, it's something else. And after it dries down, it becomes something else as well.
Absolutely. No, clearly. And it's funny, I've actually heard recently rumors of other banana tequilas coming out. I mean, but the whole sort of, banana tequila concept is now a hot subject in the world of tequila, because it's as weird as it sounds, and it sounds somewhat sort of like Caribbean kind of cocktail-ish. It actually isn't. It's very subtle, and lends itself to that delicious vanilla that we sort of, so many of us love in things like the 1942. But it oftentimes is too on the nose in some of those other cocktails. This is very delicious. It's very subtle, and it hits perfectly, actually. So well done.
And I look at añejo in general as more of a sippy tequila. It's kind of that, and at the end of the night, cigar smokers like it. Whiskey drinkers are loving tequila today because of where tequila's gone. I would say the biggest growth from any other spirit have come from whiskey drinkers to tequila, because it has the same mentality in terms of aging. And I think that, again, the perception is one thing for certain people, but the reality, and so the añejos definitely garner a lot of whiskey drinkers as well.
Amazing. Your tequilas are sensational. Congratulations on all of this. I mean, really amazing that you, and listening to you talk about it too, that here you can hear people that this is a man who knows what he's talking about, enjoys what he's doing, and is very well vested. This isn't simply a celebrity endorsement, which we've seen on the Shaken and Stirred show more than once. You have an interesting background, John. I mean, you were brought up, I believe, or you were born in Detroit, which is one of my favorite cities in the world. It's a hard knock place, Detroit. It's still a hard knock place. One of the reasons why I love it, I love the people over there. When you were a kid, what access did you have to these sorts of luxuries? And how did you develop this sort of nose, this sort of taste, this sort of sensibility? That's what I'm wondering.
I mean, I grew up in Detroit in 7 people in my family, 5 kids, in a 800 square foot house with 3 small bedrooms and 1 very small bathroom. So there weren't really any luxuries. I shared a little bedroom with 2 other brothers. We had to fight in the mornings for the bathroom. There weren't long periods that you could spend in it. There was always someone knocking on the door. And Detroit also wasn't a fashion town by any means. It was a blue collar town, a grit town, a pride. It's a city that was really based a lot, as we all know, in the automobile industry. So very much, a town of what I call, thunder and power, and supercharged, but really more about the roar of that, and building those kind of vehicles, and not always the finesse. It wasn't really so much about the finesse. It was really about the power of those cars and that type of thing. Today, it's a different city. It's much more about the finesse in terms of the automobiles. But to your point, it still has a lot of the grit in the city itself. So yeah, so I grew up in that world, and I grew up also having to kind of work my way through college, pretty much working full time and going to school, and in a retail store, men's store. So in it, I started to at least acquire the taste for better things, attention to detail, quality, that type of thing. Didn't always have the money for the taste, but I had the eye for it, I guess. And later on, I went to school. I got a degree in the sciences in education. It wasn't about fashion, but during that time, the whole time I was working in a men's store, and I really kind of fell in love with fashion. And I also realized from the time I was probably in high school, the early days of high school, that when I wore certain things, girls dug them. And so I started to think a lot about my wardrobe, because I wanted to be, girls to dig what I was wearing, and, a way to get there, just like musicians, you always hear the stories about musicians want the women, So it was a similar thing. And it was probably because I was at that point in time in my life, I was always also quite shy. Yeah, that's kind of my initial upbringing, and it really started to change when I moved to New York, and I took a job with Ralph Lauren. I had been working with Ralph Lauren in the Midwest, and they moved me to New York to head up sales for the company. And I really fell in love with the whole design process, the whole lifestyle of Ralph Lauren at that time. Not necessarily that it was my lifestyle by any means, but that someone had created a brand that was a bit of a dream and a fantasy for a lot of people. And so it really raised my eye to looking at how do you create things that both endure, stand the test of time, but also, touch people in a certain way and connect with people to, everybody has a little bit of a fantasy in their life on where they want to be, what they want to do. And so for me, I connected with that aspect because I grew up with none of it, really.
It's so fascinating. I mean, certainly a brand like Ralph Lauren, who has obviously stood the test of time, but in many respects is both not fashionable but fashionable, right? It's more iconic and legendary. And I think, as far as pieces that would be good 20 years ago may actually work today, in the same way. It's sort of it's obviously hard to be a fashion designer, try and be in fashion, create sort of the newest, coolest stuff, but at the same time, stay sort of, I guess, create garments that are going to, I guess, last forever, and be able to create a brand that people can identify you. If you look back at Ralph Lauren, or even people like Valentino or Calvin Klein too, they're you can sort of tell their designs. Armani was the same way. You can sort of tell an Armani suit, back in the day. You can tell it now, and it's somehow you managed to do that. Was that something you kind of? Did you learn that? Is that something that's ingrained in you? How do you produce something like that?
I think you have to be a bit of a student of whatever you do. And so for fashion, I was a bit of a student. I was also a big sponge. I really wanted to learn everything about every product that I could possibly learn, every category from, a tailored jacket like you're wearing to a pair of boots. I really wanted to know about it. And it became my passion. And, I was also lucky enough to be head of design at both Ralph Lauren and Calvin Klein. I grew into those roles over the years. And they were Calvin and Ralph were completely different brands, completely. One was about kind of the Kennedys and, this kind of luxury type of life that everybody kind of aspired to. And Calvin was about edgy and sex and that type of thing. And when I started my brand in 2000, I knew I couldn't be either one of those because I needed to have my own identity, my own ethos, my own DNA.
You were sort of more rock and roll. Am I not correct? I mean, you seem to
Yeah,
have
you
a
know,
more
I mean,
music flair
there's
to
a
it.
bit of that aura, I would say the consumer and the industry because of my affiliation with a lot of musicians and the marketing and that. But I mean, your jacket really isn't rock and roll, but there was a
But it is
lot of.
different. So when you look at this jacket, guys, I know it's a podcast, so I'm going to describe it to you. But there's a sort of like there's a check to it, but there's also like every all over it. It's like it's picked slightly, right?
It's
So
got a texture to
it's
it.
got a
Yeah.
lot of texture to it. And whenever I wear this, and it's actually a suit, right? So whenever I wear the whole piece, people literally ask me, "Where'd you get that from? Where'd you get that?" All the time. And it's not even new. I'm like, that's something special when you can wear a suit 5 years later and people will be like, "Where'd you get that from?" And I'm like, well, actually,
That's nice. That's nice to hear. And then, and part of it for what you said very clearly was, it's not easy to do, but the most successful brands create their own identity, their own DNA. They're not Me Too, they're not copycats. They kind of create their own identity, DNA, and as I said before, ethos. And it doesn't mean it can't evolve, but they're always true to themselves. They're always true to what their brand set out to be. And when I started my company in 2000, that was very much what I walked away from Ralph Lauren, where I had been head of design at that moment. And prior to that, Calvin, I walked away knowing very clearly that I had to stand on my own feet. I had to create my own look and identity, as you said, so that I didn't have to have a big logo on it. People would know, like the texture, whatever, the type of fabrics that we do, the type of detail that we do, the silhouettes that we do, that it had an identity, that it was our brand hand to it. And if I think back 20 plus years that we started that, it's probably the thing that I'm most proud of is that we were able to create that, because as I look at the landscape out there's not that many brands that do it, and there's very few brands that consistently can continue to do it for long periods of time.
Well, obviously you mentioned it, the music. I mentioned it too, because that's one of the ways that I sort of first got introduced when, various big, people like Lenny Kravitz and what have you would wear a suit of yours, what have you. And obviously Nick Jonas, you partnered with here, and you're sort of in that music world quite heavily. And a lot of fashion designers are in it to some extent, but I sort of see you as sort of synonymous with it almost. What is your, how has music influenced you, and how does it influence your designs? How does it play a part, or is it, in what aspect are you influenced by it in general?
Well, it started when I was growing up in Detroit in that very small house, when I had to somehow remove myself from everything that was going on in the house at the moment. And I would put on headphones and the music would transport me someplace else. I was no longer in that little bedroom with my two brothers. I was someplace else. I was in front of the stage of Led Zeppelin or Pink Floyd or, whatever it was at the time. And it always became a kind of an energy source for me as well. I even remember studying for my exams in college, and I was always playing right before I went in for my exam. Before I left my apartment, I was always playing music cranked up because it kind of gave me energy. There was something there. And so when I started my brand, it wasn't something that was in my thought process. It just was kind of in me, and it flowed throughout it. And early on, we started being discovered by a lot of music artists who would want to meet up with me, to wear the clothes, to know more about it. And then they would also find out about my kind of crazy affinity and passion for music. And that became a big part of the connection with a lot of these people, because it wasn't some designer that was posing with using some music artists to promote their brand. They always considered it, when somebody told me, one of the most famous music artists out there told me, "You're one of us," one time when I was sitting with them, I thought it was any other award I ever won, whatever. They didn't mean anything. Jimmy Page saying to me that "you're one of us" meant to me like everything in the world, So
I'm a big
yeah.
Led Zeppelin fan as well, by the way. I've got a huge portrait of the band down in my kitchen. This was my 40th birthday gift for my wife, and yeah,
Very
I can only
nice.
imagine that must have been a moment.
Yeah, so I think that it really became part of my, like, in my bloodstream, and it was, the bit of the edge, the way to think outside of the box a little bit. But also, like I said, the energy force. There's something about it for me that the people that I work with, some love it, some probably don't, but I can't not have music playing here in the studio. I come in the morning, I'm usually the first one, and I turn the music on. I can't, even when I'm working alone, I have to have it. It's something that just propels me.
I understand. I completely understand. Pretty much the same way. It's, as soon as I wake up in the morning, and you set the tone with the music, right? It can be
Exactly.
different days, different moments, different things you're doing. No, 100%. And tequila, I mean, having a fantastic tequila with with great music is going to really set the moment. Look, it's been so fabulous to have you on, John, and to talk about your tequila, to talk about your career a little bit. We have something called Last Orders on this show, which is a sort of a little quick rapid fire moment where we just get to know you a little bit better, which is very simple and fast. We'd love to wrap this up with that. Tom, would you like to do the honors?
I'd love to. I'm sorry I stayed so quiet. It's a bit like, literally, if you had a conversation with somebody about oysters, and when you've had a bad oyster, and you said it, you said it halfway through the conversation. You said, some people just have got this thing about tequila because they had a really bad time on it when they didn't even know that decent tequila existed. I am one of those. I'm one of those people who, I love clams. I can't eat them. I still love oysters. I haven't had a bad one yet. Touch wood. I don't. Tequila is that thing. It's that terrible, terrible thing.
Yeah.
That moment in my youth when I just. I'm sure it's. It's
Tom,
just
we
one of
have
those.
to get you next time you're in the US. Once this travel craziness is over and we get you over here, I'm going to call John and we're going to go out with Nick, and maybe we'll go to Priyanka's restaurant.
We'll break your phobia.
Break it. No, seriously, it's probably, I would imagine, 90% of it by now. I mean, 30 years later, 90% of it has got to be kind of psychosomatic, right? I mean, I probably, yeah. Okay, I'll hold you to that. I'm on. I'm always on. If I don't like something, like food-wise or something, I always make a point of trying it once a year, just to make sure that something hasn't changed. Other than with things like, two things like clams and tequila. But anyway, so I'm sorry I've been so quiet and I haven't been as enthusiastic as you. But I mean, it's been interesting hearing. It's been an interesting, it's been educational, should I say? Can I ask you some quick fire questions?
Yeah, go for it.
Any way, shape, or form, substance or style?
Style.
Didn't even need to say which one comes first. Okay. So now this is taking off your chat earlier. To life as it should be or life as it could be?
To life as it should be.
What does that mean, John?
I think we all have something in our mind about what, whether you're on an island someplace, or like I said, you're with your family and friends, or it's a romantic situation, whatever it is. I think it's to life for you. It's a personal thing. I definitely like To Life as It Could Be, because I think they're quite similar in a way. But I think we all kind of look at our lives, no matter how good they are, on where you'd want to be right now, or who you'd want to be with right now.
Yeah.
To life as you'd want it to be.
No, life as it should be is a current thing that said. I mean, I kind of pulled that off from your friend Nick, as he obviously said, in the moment. So I would imagine that we can interpret that as you're living in the moment, not as opposed to living in the future, which actually weirdly goes to my next question, which I think you've already answered: staying current or staying true?
Staying true.
What does that mean? What is this? Why not current?
I think you can be both. I think if you're worried about being current, you're thinking too hard about whatever it is. And I think if you're being true, you're always going to be who you are. It's like your style question or substance. For me, style is the way you carry yourself. It isn't necessarily about your clothes. It's how you walk into a room. It's how you carry yourself. It's how people remember you. And so I look at, this as the same way.
I will use that quote when I talk to my son later on today. When I have dinner with him, I'll be like, it's about how you walk into the room. It's not about what you wear. He's obsessed with fashion, by the way. So it's a chip off the old block. But anyway, go ahead.
This is an unusual one, but and it's like it could be interpreted as being slightly morbid, but it's not supposed to be. Epitaph. What would you like? And this is, by the way, you really don't have to answer this because it's a sort of. It could be seen as an absurdly intrusive question, but do you have any idea of what you would like your epitaph to be?
I never really thought about it, but it would have to do something with passion. I think, live life with passion. I think if I had to make up something right now, I've honestly never thought about it, but I definitely think the word passion for me is something that I kind of live by.
Great.
Really?
Amazing.
Maybe you just have Villa One across the top of it.
Sorry,
I like it.
I'm living in Villa One under the ground for the rest of the time. I love it.
I like it.
I've never. There's never been a question I've asked on the show, and I think that was I think that was brilliant. A very revealing answer to it, which sums very kind of like if you sum someone up. I think it was a brilliant way of doing it. The last question is the one we ask everybody: shaken or stirred?
Stirred. I like to shake shit up, as they would say. So, if you're not stirring it up, it's not going to be exciting.
And there you have it, everybody. John Varvatos, congratulations. Villa One Tequila. Check it out. The Reposado, they've got a silver, they've got an anejo. They're all unique. I want to say my favorite is the Reposado. I think it's incredibly drinkable. They're all fantastic. I'm going to have to try them mixed in different ways. But why not try a spicy mango margarita that John made? We'll publish the recipe on our Instagram at Shaken and Stirred Show. But where can people buy Villa One right now? What's the easiest way for them to get it?
Well, you can buy it online in if you search Villa One, there's a lot of online retailers. Some, only distribute to some states. And, we're in thousands of retailers and beautiful restaurants and bars around the country. So it's ask for Villa One out there. If they don't have it, they should have it.
And if they don't have it, just tell them to call Nick Jonas and get him on.
Exactly.
Nick needs to do some work here. Look, John's out here pushing this product. Nick, if you hear me, I'm going to speak to your brother Kevin and Joe, and we're going to get you on to talk about this too. Maybe we'll get John back for that little special moment. What a pleasure. Good luck with everything, and hopefully we'll be able to rendezvous in New York City at some time in the future. And
I hope so. Yeah,
have a drink then.
And try some tequila again.
This has been fun. Thank you guys for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
All the best.
Tom, I got to see you sometime soon with some tequila.
Yeah, we're gonna do that. I'm up for it. Let's try it.
Okay. All the best, guys.
Thank you very much for listening. That is Shaken and Stirred. We will be back next week with another podcast and another fantastic guest. And stay safe.
See ya.